In 2006, the Queen celebrated her 80th birthday. It was reported that our monarch received over 20,000 cards and 17,000 emails. I mean, who's got the Queen's email address? And what is it? lizwindsor@hotmail.com. And she also got one anonymous note saying, "Oh, just retire, will you?" I wonder who that was from, eh? But with a glittering history, a superb stadium and a record amount of trophies, Liverpool could certainly claim to be part of football's royal family. And in 2006 they were at it again, reaching their 13th FA Cup final with their sights firmly set on a 7th victory. And one man with no shortage of big game experience was Reds defender Jamie Carragher, who was playing in his 10th cup final in as many years. But playing in his first major final was Liverpool striker Peter Crouch, and he'd nabbed 3 goals in the FA Cup thus far. And if some divine intervention were needed, Liverpool also had goalkeeper Jerzy Dudek on the bench, who was rumoured to have been Pope John Paul II's favourite player. As for West Ham, they were appearing in their 5th FA Cup final, having won 3 of the previous 4. And in striker Marlon Harewood, they had the form player going into the match, having top scored that season for the Hammers with 16 goals, including the only strike in the semi-final victory over Middlesbrough. And in goal, they had a man who, because of his name, has dominated football quizzes his whole career. Shaka Hislop. Oh, his real name's Neil, by the way. No, seriously, it is Neil. If you were looking for goals that season, then you could do a lot worse than following the Reds' FA Cup progress, as Rafa Benitez's men netted a massive 17 goals in 5 games on their way to Cardiff, including 5 against Luton in round 3 and 7 against Birmingham in the quarter-finals. As for West Ham, they went about their business in a less extravagant fashion, but they still averaged over 2 goals a game on their way to the cup final. So, with that kind of goal-scoring form for both sides, it was always going to be a classic, wasn't it? Let's head for the Millennium Stadium. The year 2000 was a year of celebration as the nation welcomed a new millennium. It was a time for new hopes and new dreams, and in London this optimism manifested itself in some ambitious new structures. The crowning glory should have been the Millennium Dome. However, its escalating price and the fact that it resembled a deflated tent made it the white elephant of Labour's end-of-century celebrations. Thankfully, a wobbly bridge, a big wheel and a modern art gallery just about made up for it. However, at FA headquarters they were unveiling ambitious plans for an all-singing, all-dancing construction of their own. It was to mean the end of Wembley as we knew it, and after 80 years and 71 consecutive cup finals, the 2000 final between Chelsea and Aston Villa would be the last under the old Twin Towers. That season's competition had started in controversial fashion, as current holders Manchester United opted out to instead take part in the more lucrative World Club Championships. Still, Villa weren't complaining as they lined up for their first final since 1957, with manager John Gregory hoping to end his season on a high after their 6th placed finish. Villa's lineup included 8 Englishmen, with one in particular thankful to be in the starting 11. Dion Dublin had suffered a potentially life-threatening injury when he broke his neck in a game against Sheffield Wednesday, but was miraculously back for the end-of-season showpiece. The only Englishman in Chelsea's starting 11 was Dennis Wise, as the Blues lined up with a smorgasbord of European talent, including one of the Premier League's greatest ever imports, Gianfranco Zola. However, it had been Gus Poyet who was the Blues' leading scorer on the road to Wembley. The midfielder had grabbed a hat-trick against Hull in the 3rd round before scoring a crucial brace in the 2-1 win against Newcastle in the semis. Chelsea ended up scoring 17 goals en route to the Twin Towers and started the day as overwhelming favourites. In contrast, Aston Villa had scraped through to the final, winning by a solitary goal in each round. Benito Carboni had been Villa's main goal threat with 5 goals en route to Wembley. The semi-final against Bolton had been a nervy affair, the Villains winning the match on penalties to make it to their first FA Cup final in 43 years. David James's 2 penalty saves had made him a hero in the semis, and he was destined to have a major say in the outcome of the final. Who would win the last FA Cup final to be played at Wembley? Let's find out by joining our commentators for an historic day in the capital. In 1993, the doors of Buckingham Palace were thrown open to the public for the very first time. And within a week of the first tourists stepping through the hallowed gates, group bookings were filled for the next 3 years. And another hot ticket in 1993 was, of course, the FA Cup final, as Arsenal played Sheffield Wednesday at Wembley on the 15th of May. Now, the two clubs certainly weren't strangers that season, as not only had they met twice in the league, but they'd also contested the League Cup final, which Arsenal won 2-1. Midfielder Steve Morrow had scored the winner that day, but an exuberant celebration involving Tony Adams led to a broken arm for the midfielder, ending his season before he could even receive his medal. But his injury did mean that Morrow made a little bit of history, as prior to the FA Cup final he became the first player to receive a winner's medal before a cup final. On the pitch, Ian Wright was Arsenal's top scorer that campaign, and he would earn that accolade for 6 consecutive seasons during the 90s, earning 33 England caps in the process. But for his strike partner Kevin Campbell, it was a different story, as Campbell is actually the highest Premier League goal scorer never to have been capped by his country. However, one man on the other end of the goal scoring spectrum was John Jensen, whose fruitless quest for a goal led to him becoming a cult figure among Arsenal fans. In fact, when he ultimately broke his duck in 1994 on the 98th attempt, I might add, Jensen aficionados were so moved that they had t-shirts made bearing the logo "I saw John Jensen score," some of which are still around to this day. For Wednesday, John Harkes was to become the first American to play in an FA Cup final. And he was certainly the only man on the pitch to have appeared in People magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People issue. Though, judging by the talent on show, it was perhaps no surprise. But Arsenal's road to Wembley had been anything but ugly, with the Gunners netting a whopping 13 times in 6 games. But they'd only just squeaked past their old foes Tottenham in only the second ever semi-finals to be played at Wembley. As for Sheffield Wednesday, well, they'd plotted a less spectacular route to the final, but the Owls had also knocked out their city rivals at the semi-final stage. Nevertheless, Wednesday more than held their own in the final. Ian Wright's 20th minute opener was cancelled out by David Hirst's second half strike, earned the Owls a deserved replay. So, 5 days later, on the 20th of May 1993, both sides met for the 5th time that season to finally settle their epic struggle in the shadow of the Twin Towers.
Good evening from Peter